This is the story of how one species changed a planet. The latest chapter of our story begins in England 250 years ago. Fueled by coal, then oil, several brilliant inventions appeared. They ignited the Industrial Revolution, which spread like wildfire through Europe, North America, Japan, then elsewhere. The great railways, then cars and highways, connected people across the globe. Medical discoveries saved millions of lives. New artificial fertilizers meant we could feed more people. Population rose rapidly. But this was nothing compared with what was to come. The 1950s marked the beginning of the Great Acceleration. Globalization, marketing, tourism, and huge investments helped fuel enormous growth. People swarmed to cities, which became even more powerful engines of creativity. In a single lifetime, the well-being of millions has improved beyond measure. Health, wealth, security, longevity. Never have so many had so much. Yet 1 billion are malnourished. In a single lifetime, we have grown into a phenomenal global force. We move more sediment and rock annually than all natural processes, such as erosion and rivers. We manage 3/4 of all land outside the ice sheets. Greenhouse gas levels this high have not been seen for over 1 million years. Temperatures are increasing. We have made a hole in the ozone layer. We are losing biodiversity. Many of the world's deltas are sinking due to damming, mining, and other causes. Sea level is rising. Ocean acidification is a real threat. We are altering Earth's natural cycles. We have entered the Anthropocene, a new geological epoch dominated by humanity. This relentless pressure on our planet risks unprecedented destabilization. But our creativity, energy, and industry offer hope. We have shaped our past. We are shaping our present. We can shape our future. You and I are part of this story. We are the first generation to realize this new responsibility. As the population grows to 9 billion, we must find a safe operating space for humanity, for the sake of future generations. Welcome to the Anthropocene.
Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another exciting module here in GSC 120, or Concepts in Environmental Science, where we want to be able to take a look at the world around us, ask questions, and conduct investigations that generate data, or in this case, evidence, to be able to support the conceptualization of the impact humans have on what we dub the environment. So in this week's module, we want to be able to connect science, sustainability, but also your everyday life. And how are we going to do that? We are going to deep dive into something called ecosystem services. Don't worry, it's not just fancy science speak. It's about the invisible ways nature is working for us and how can we work for nature. And how understanding this concept can help us protect the planet we call home and better understand our role in sustainability, because ecosystem services are the benefits that humans derive from the ecosystem, either on a local level or a globalized one. You see, nature's not just scenery. It's doing some very heavy lifting behind the scenes. And as we know, humans, we have impacted the Earth system on a variety of different levels. So are we truly impacting the role nature and the environment has for us? And how can we fix it? When we take a look at ecosystem services, they are generally grouped into 4 big categories: provisioning, regulating, supporting, and cultural. When we break these down into more relevant examples, such as a coastal wetland, like the one you're going to be visiting this week in the module, there are a variety of different aspects of these big four categories that come into play when learning about ecosystem services. For an example, provisioning services, well, when we think of a coastal wetland, this wetland supports fisheries, and this provides food and income for local communities. It's essentially nature's pantry, feeding not just the people, but also the local food chains that we harvest the fish from. There's also regulating services. Have you ever wondered how some towns survive hurricanes better than others? Well, wetlands actually act as natural barriers. They buffer storm surges and flooding. They also filter pollutants from water, helping keep nearby communities safe, healthy, but also sustainable. There's also supporting services. And every ecosystem on our planet is alive, from the smallest microbe to some of the largest organisms that call that ecosystem their home. Because supporting services needs to support the biodiversity. Again, birds, fish, invertebrates, plants, they all depend on each other to thrive and survive. These interactions keep the ecosystem strong, which in turns keep us strong as we contribute to better understanding the sustainable impacts that we can apply to that ecosystem. But also, we need to think about the human impact element. You see, the last category is that of cultural. And cultural services is actually very important because wetlands are spiritually and recreationally important when we think about the ethics behind how we interact with these concepts. For example, people will go to fish in the wetlands. Bird watching is a hobby of mine, and some of the most unique birds that I've actually observed live in a wetland. And sometimes people just go there to get away from city life and to find peace. When we track all the way back to, say, one of our early lessons in the course, I like to connect that to, say, when we look at environmental ethics with indigenous populations, as some utilize the wetland as a bit of a connection to their ancestral past and maintaining their cultural ties on a sustainable level for future generations. Now, speaking of earlier topics that we have covered in this class, one topic that I find also connects into our learning journey for the module this week is that of environmental metrics, because this concept is all supported by data and how the Earth is changing, and the environment responds to that change. Because we need to realize that it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking we can't control nature, but we need to ultimately flip the script. What if instead of managing nature, we work with nature, using what it already has to offer, and protect both our environment and also ourselves, allowing for us to systematically change our sustainability for the greater good. Maybe if we use ecosystem services to our advantage, we just slow down environmental collapse. We're not going to solve it because the human-led impacts have already occurred, but at least mitigated enough for us to learn with, and thus allowing us to become more sustainable for future generations to come. Ultimately, the real takeaway for this week's module I'd like for you to walk away with is to understand, again, everything is connected. And if we lose one part, like, say, the wetland example I mentioned earlier, it starts a ripple effect, and these effects can be huge. That's why we approach GSC 120 from a sustainability perspective. Because sustainability isn't about one big fix. It's about protecting the systems that ultimately protect us. And if we can learn about how those systems continue to thrive, survive, and maintain that protection, we can then adapt technologies to be able to assist with that protection. So let's revisit those four types of ecosystem services and think about how we experience them daily. Well, provisioning services, we can always think of close to home examples like the food on your table, the water you drink, the medicines you take have to come from an ecosystem. Regulation wise, the clean air that we breathe, the climate we depend on, the floods we don't experience are all thanks to nature's checks and balances. And that our current poor understanding of these ecosystem services are starting to reflect themselves in the ongoing times. Supporting services. Think of pollinators, like bees, or the microbes that help supply the nutrients and cycle those nutrients in the soil, essentially working as nature's backstage crew. I think are very important in our understanding of these complex ideas that are relatable to sustainability. But then there's also that cultural aspect. The park that we relax in or go out into nature for long hikes, these are human traditions passed through generations and provide a sense of wonder when we experience a phenomena in the environment. And without that connection, I think we would truly be lost as humans on the planet, as many of the other animals have maintained these connections. But we're the ones with technology that can not only maintain these connections, but keep them going. And you know what? This week, we're going to be taking a virtual field trip out of our local Appalachian region and heading over to the Atlantic coastal plain. We're going to take a look at New Jersey, where urban settings and the wild meet to form the environment and the concepts that we can apply also right here locally. More southwards here in West Virginia, near larger cities like Morgantown and Charleston. There we'll explain examples of ecosystem services in action and ask ourselves some philosophical questions as we work on our assignment this week, such as how do our values shape what we protect, either historically or your more personal insights? Can we understand that ecosystems help us rebuild and maintain sustainability better? And what happens when, say, cultural and ecological knowledge are combined together to paint a mosaic of understanding for us to learn more about this idea that helps us move forward in sustainability and keeps our planet as green as possible? Ecosystem services aren't just about the science that drives them, but they also support almost every UN Sustainable Development Goal that we learned about early in this class. Remember those Millennium Development Goals that we encountered in the first thematic section? These range from clean water to addressing poverty and reduction in climate warming. It all ties back to really how these ecosystem services truly serve humanity. And sustainability, keep in mind, it isn't about doing less. It's just about doing better. Better farming, better city planning, building better relations with the Earth system, but also with each other as humans. And understanding ecosystem services, it's just one step. one concept to a much larger scenario. It's like seeing the Earth's blueprint and then realizing we're not above it, we're within it, as we talked about basically in week one of the course. So this week, I want you to observe what ecosystems do as you notice it, as you're noticing these different categories occurring all around you. You know, the clean air that you breathe, or the water that you drink, or even as you walk in the woods and enjoy your time out there. These are all regulated by a service. And if you'd like, contribute your thoughts, share with me, like we do on the discussion boards in our class communications and email, um, what these ecosystems services are meaning to you as you work your way through the material. I'd like to be able to better understand how strong your connection is after completing these different topics in the course. So let's explore, learn, and then build a future together that works with nature, not against it. And if you have any questions about the material this week, please reach out. You can get a hold of me through video chat, swing by my office, or just send me an email. And let's learn together here in GSC 120, also known as Concepts in Environmental Science. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to class this week here in GSC 120, or Concepts in Environmental Science online. Well, this weekly welcome is in fact going to be our last weekly welcome for this summer semester. And I want to be able to help you conclude your learning journey by bringing everything back together. And that is going to be using the theme of the Anthropocene and maybe thoughts about the continuation and future of environmental science. So when we take a look at the term Anthropocene, we have mentioned it a few times in this course and have loosely defined it. There are millions of different definitions in various academic journals that discuss of what the Anthropocene is. And when you take all those definitions and put them together, a general theme for this phenomena comes to light. And that is that the Anthropocene is a defining point in human history. It's the transition from when we are developing and to becoming more well-developed in our populations and the use of technology. It's a transitionary phase. And we have different markers on where we decide on where that transition occurs. Some academics use the rise of civilizations in the cultural hearth, such as Mesopotamia, being an indicator of the Anthropocene. More research has been suggesting that maybe we use the atomic bomb tests in the 1950s as a cutoff for the Anthropocene, as technology goes from low to high, basically more basic into complex technology that harms the environment. And that's where that key is that how I would define the Anthropocene is really any impact after the establishment of a urban center that humans have induced onto the environment. And that's why conceptually we need to be able to think about this time as a time of transition. But this transition has harmed the environment because it's humans impacting to make their transition more smooth and successful. So we can also gather evidence from other parts of the world. Again, we look at ice cores and we can find dust that was kicked up from the first atomic blast to help define the Anthropocene, but we can just look at the surface of our planet. This image right here on the right, I think is very sobering because it shows a big line of evidence to support the Anthropocene. Right here, we have a cliffside, And this image was taken by a unmanned drone in Ghana, Africa. In the back, you see a city with some people walking along this cliffside with their cattle. Ghana is a developing part of the world, still very much focused on their agriculture, but also it's a port town connected to ports, so they get international trade. But when we get down into these lower, older uh, beds of the cliff, it's been identified that this is all sandstone. Sandstone generally takes thousands to millions of years to accumulate and form this bed. As we move to younger times, towards the surface, you notice all this white and black. Well, what is it? Well, seeing that humans have impacted the environment and that the impact is not uniform all throughout the planet, and that some parts of the world uh, have more or less impacts based on their connection to the environment, that red box, the black and the white, is actually human produced garbage. I think that's very sobering because right there is a strong evidence-based indicator that the Anthropocene is alive and well. Humans are not supposed to be producing that much waste, but we are. When we take a look at the published literature, we can see that there's 9 indicators of drivers that humans have put onto our planet to negatively impact it, such as climate change, ocean acidification, biosphere integrity, um, changes in biogeochemical flows, your feedback systems, either positive or negative. And I think that is a phenomena we need to be able to conceptualize and better understand because it starts at that Anthropocene. Now, this is from the published literature. There's a citation right here. I actually got this from a website called Sci-Hub. This will be a very helpful website in your upcoming assignments because it's really great. Because if you go on to, say, Google Scholar and you find a research article that you might want to use as a line of evidence, you click on it, it says it wants you to pay, but because we are an OER-friendly course, all you have to do is just take that link, copy and paste it, go to Sci-Hub, put it in the search bar, unlocks it for you. I'm all about open research and accessibility. And that's a great way to get, not just for this class, but if you're doing another research paper and you need a lot of really good references and you can't, unfortunately, pay for them, websites like this do exist. So this image right here, I'm just going to move myself down into the bottom left, is a nice little figure that shows all the safe operating zones, but many of them we have surpassed and have entered that high risk. And this was taken from the same paper that was written in 2019. We're now in 2024. And as you can see, we are still very much in that high risk uncertainty. We're still doing more harm than good in the Anthropocene. And we need to make changes prior to 2050 because that is the estimated time when everything starts going kaput. Wants to ask. And there are 6 key aspects for a sustainable city, because a sustainable city is a urban center engineered to improve our day-to-day lives. It needs to have efficient resource management and planning, green spaces to protect agriculture and biodiversity, transportation that is publicly accessible and allows your populations to move around that city without allowing for greenhouse gas byproducts to enter that atmosphere, because the factories that those populations are going to need to head to and start to work at are already producing high levels of those chemicals. Renewable energy integration. A good sustainable city needs to utilize renewable energy sources, transition away from fossil fuels and into things like solar, wind, and those will help power the infrastructure and then develop smart infrastructure, use smart technologies to optimize the urban services. And this includes being able to process waste collection. But this is a big one right here at the bottom: community engagement and education and scientific awareness, but with an aspect on the heritage. Every city on our planet is unique, and being able to take your population and engage them and allow them to learn more about their environmental impacts is a great way to allow them to be able to understand their impacts, but then do something about it to to move that city as a cohesive unit towards sustainability and allow for more generations to come and keep that city moving, because cities are not going to go and disappear overnight. In fact, human geographers, those that study the patterns of movement, will actually have hypothesized that over time, many of our large cities are going to sprawl out and become one cohesive unit. There are plenty of other sustainable cities around the world. And this week, you're going to maybe take a look at other ones, such as Copenhagen in Denmark, cities in Singapore, even Chabrita, Brazil. Other parts of the world have made these massive sustainable cities. And I want you to be able to take the themes and the ideas of these sustainable cities, think critically about them, and then apply them to your local Appalachian region. We're fairly sustainable out here, but we can always do it better. And we need to move towards a sustainable future. We need to be able to start advocating and working towards resource management and efficiency, education and advocacy, research and innovation, and conservation, mitigation, and restoration. These are the 4 ways that I think that if we gain an awareness of these concepts, we gain an awareness that we can, as each other, move forward towards a sustainable future by embracing these themes. For an example, research and innovation. Learn how drones are used in agriculture to be able to go out and find ways where our agricultural systems can become much more sustainable. In fact, that's one of our research goals here at the college, is being able to use that technology to maintain sustainability. So if you're interested in something like that, please reach out and we'll work on some research together. You're more than welcome to join the Biological Environmental Technology program to further that research. And as part of that research, you'll be able to advocate locally. I actually review research proposals from the Chesapeake Bay Trust, which is a organization that funds a lot of green sustainable projects to help restore and protect our Chesapeake Bay environments. And so this takes us into our big assignment that's going to take place over the next couple of weeks. And this is a capstone research project. I have split this up into 2 parts, so please be aware of the submissions of these 2 parts. But it's called Sustain a City. And you're probably wondering, like, what is a capstone? And a capstone is just a large research paper. You've probably written plenty of research papers in your college learning journey, and this one is no different. But this one has a few extra elements to it. And a capstone, I like to also think of is when you're building a stone bridge, you have your cornerstones, which anchor your bridge into the ground, but then your capstones are on top. It's a accumulation of what you have learned in this semester. You're taking all of the material we've covered and then applying it, critically thinking about it, and then being able to describe it and use it as a form of science communication. So, sustain a city is that your job is to develop a plan, basically a descriptive communication, a PowerPoint presentation that's been recorded for a sustainable community that will address the technologies, concepts, and or techniques that you have learned in the different modules to help you build the most sustainable city that you can think of. You're in the driver's seat for being able to build a city that has to be sustainable, and you get to decide on how that city is built. In this capstone, you will need to gather appropriate evidence. You're expected to provide appropriate or correct evidence that supports your response to this assignment. For an example, you'll need to be able to conduct independent research and provide facts and data in the form of citations and found in the published literature, and that could support or discard your decisions as part of your overall design. You will need to also state the appropriate links between technologies. You're expected to provide the appropriate and correct links between different technologies and how should they be deployed to make your city sustainable. And also cultivate a systems level thinking. We covered this very early on in the class about the Earth system and how everything is all interconnected. And so you want to be able to think about the cause and effect relationships. Essentially, go out, figure out how you want to plan your city. What technologies will you use to make it sustainable? What the evidence is that other cities that are currently using these technologies, how are they using it to maintain their sustainability? And then maybe what are the drawbacks? Um, Earlier, I mentioned that example with AI. Um, there are cities that are being run by artificial intelligence, but they need a lot of water to keep the servers that hold the artificial intelligence programs cool. Well, then what happens to the water after it's been used? Do they just flush it back out in the nearest basin? Well, then if they do, what happens to the biodiversity that lives in that basin? Something to think about. Solar technologies, if they are, producing a lot of energy, but what happens in a time of climate change? Would you need to be able to make a mixture of different technology and concepts? This image right here is a image or a representation of the city that I would go with. I made this using the video game Sim City during the summertime, just to be able to conceptualize this capstone and get inspiration on how we can all work together to make a sustainable uh, infrastructure. Now, let's actually talk about finding and evaluating our and utilizing our resources. I like to call this the good, bad, and the ugly for the Clint Eastwood film. So good. As this is a novel research project that I would expect that you are not going to be plagiarizing. You should paraphrase your text from your sources. Make sure you're using academic research articles from credible sources. We already covered what good science is versus what um, isn't going to be good science. Google Scholar is a great way to get this. And being students here at the college, you have access to EBSCOhost, JSTOR, LibreText is a great way for free textbooks. In fact, that's where I found all your textbooks reading this semester. If there's a resource that you really need, please reach out. because I could either go on that Sci-Hub website and download it for you, or utilize our interlibrary loan and get you access to it. And if not, I will be able to um, find a way to get you that resource. Wikipedia, it's fine, but don't rely onto it. It's great for getting a good overview, but then delve into at the end of the Wikipedia page where they will list their citations, their reliable sources. Go read through that as an overview, then find those citations, and then use those to support your claims as line of evidence. And so let's actually talk about the ugly. Um, so the ugly AI programs like ChatGPT to conduct your research for you. No, don't be doing that. Many AI programs are actually language generators. They're great for conceptualizing, rephrasing, and articulating complex ideas while removing grammatical errors. In fact, I have a lot of typos in a lot of my messages I send. Um, but that's why unfortunately, I actually use ChatGPT to get rid of that. But I don't rely onto it for research. Um, and it's because it's a language model, but it's also highly biased in research because it wants to support you in meeting your prompt. It does not actively go out and help you critically think about the phenomena. Um, and a lot of the material that it pulls together to show you to support your prompt actually comes from, well, Google, because it's the biggest collection of human ideas and interaction with the phenomena and background research. And then also, when you think about it, all humans have a bias. Well, who programmed ChatGPT? Well, it wasn't another artificial intelligence. It was probably a human that was programming this model. So they're already injecting their bias into it. So, stay. So that's the takeaway and my opinions on research and evaluating resources. So closing remarks. And this was probably one of the hardest slides I had to write up for a class. But now that you have completed this course, you can understand societal factors contributing to the environmental degradation and promote activism on your own terms to resolve these issues. And a really notable module about that is understanding the environment. You can also understand the relationship between environmental studies, research, and field application settings to document and reflect on your own individual civic engagement related to environmental studies and concepts and goals. Think about it early in the semester when I had you go outside and take a photo and make a map of one of the places that is nearest to you, where you have the most connection to the natural world, and then be able to talk about the interplay relationships of the Earth system, because it gives you a sense of place and time when learning about environmental science. You also learn on how to evaluate key points for a complex article or research work in environmental studies and to critique the theoretical framework, methodology, and even findings of that study. Some great ways to think about that is the crystal waters, where we learned about the baby sea urchins. That was research phenomena from the Scripps Oceanic Institute, where you were able to dissect that data and learn more about it. And speaking of dissecting data, Project Eddie, where we went to Cancer Alley and gathered statistics and conducted a t-test to be able to confirm or deny if the hypothesis was truly true or not, and work with that data. Environmental science is not just learning about the human impact, but what's driving the data to support our understanding of that impact. You are also able to reflect critically about the roles and identities as citizens. and consumers. We all engage in the agricultural industry, either adjacently or primarily if you're, say, living on a farm. And so understanding our role in that is very important. And we also use scientific method to evaluate and solve environmental problems. We, over through the course, every single lesson was built off of the scientific method, being able to observe a phenomena, make educated guesses onto it, and then build experiments where we can generate data and then study that data to be able to make sense of that um, phenomena. And in short, you have prepared yourself to live in a new world where intertwining threads of society and environment shape our future. Understanding and addressing the root causes of environmental degradation is vital on both a physical and conceptual level. And by critically analyzing media and engaging in research and reflecting on our roles, you have been able to foster science communication and activism and help build informed solutions, either in a methodological or path or a physical path. And so let us be mindful citizens and stewards of the environment, using science and empathy to create a sustainable and equitable world for all. In short, I have seen those who have entered this class who were a little unsure of themselves in science. You know, they liked science, but they didn't really understand the inner workings of it, um, or how the application of evidence really supports us in the world of science, and then be able to transition and evolve over the semester into a academic scientist, being able to go out and understand about and ask questions about the world around them and how to go find those answers. So what I'm getting at is I'm proud of you. I'm proud of each and every one of you for not just sticking through the semester, but being able to change your mindsets and the impact of humans on the environment and what we can do to move towards a more sustainable future here in the Anthropocene.